They navigate this challenging and devastating incident. While the fire is under control, this remains an active scene, an evolving situation under the control of the Office of the Fire Marshal. I'm grateful to the Office of the Fire Marshal, Peel Police, and Brampton Fire for their efforts in bringing this situation under control. But unfortunately, we have 2 fatalities, 4 that are in hospital, and 3 that remain unidentified or unaccounted for. I would note, of the 4 that are in hospital, through their courage of leaving the building from the 2nd floor, that they are hopefully going to make it through this incredible tragedy, and they're certainly in our prayers. Even a 5-year-old boy who made that leap from the building. And as a father myself, where it shakes you to the core, speaking to the neighbors and hearing, their children in tears. It is a tough one for our community. In recent years, the homeowner, who is an absentee landlord, is out of the country for an extended period, submitted a building permit application to create a 2nd dwelling unit in the basement. Obviously, this was a very busy location. The building permit was issued for a required set of work to be completed, including the homeowner's duty to request an inspection for completed work. A building inspector followed up, given the absence of required inspection requests. So there was a number of times where the city went to inspect the location. It resulted in an order to comply being issued on the property. The city followed established processes and took additional measures to follow up on required work. The city has taken a proactive approach to address landlords in our city that are not following the rigorous standards in place to ensure safety and compliance. We will continue to do everything we can to support those impacted by these events, and our condolences to the families of the deceased. And I would just add, it is still early days, and we'll know at a later date if there are failings to the Ontario Building Code or the Ontario Fire Code, but it speaks to why the city has had such a rigorous and aggressive clamp down on illegal units, because it creates, unfortunately, preventable tragedies. This obviously is going to be investigated, but obviously as mayor, when I hear that investigations were refused, the entry was refused, it gives me great concern that unfortunately this is going to end up being one of those circumstances that could have been avoided. And it's just, our city has a heavy heart today. I just couldn't even imagine. We have the senior leadership that is addressing this, that is here, and they can answer any technical questions that the information is now available to us. But like I said, this is very early hours in the investigation.
Just a reminder, 1 question, 1 follow-up, and please remember to state your name and outlet.
Janice Golding, CTV News Toronto. Can you just tell us, when did the absentee landlord make the application to change this into a multi-unit dwelling?
So I think the bylaw director can speak to this, but I think there have been attempts to gain compliance since 2019. And I understand from the neighbors that during that entire period, we've been dealing with an absentee landlord.
So for 6 years, this can continue, and you can't gain entry to actually make sure someone complies? Like, how do they even get to rent a place out like this if they're not complying and you can't even check? How does that happen?
Well, maybe I'll have the director of bylaw speak to the tools that we have as a city.
Thank you for the question. It was an ongoing process. There was a series of orders to comply that were issued by the building department as the residents was going through that process, and they were in midstream of doing that, unfortunately, when this tragedy happened.
But how can this continue for 6 years and you still allow people to live in there? Why can't you just say, forget it, you can't rent this place unless you're compliant, and just kick everyone out?
Currently, we just do not have that ability to do that. We have a number of tools to get them into compliance, and that's what we were utilizing at the time.
Sorry, how many units was the house broken into?
And it's still early in the investigation. At this point, they hadn't completed the additional residential unit application, so we are not aware of those details at this time, and the investigation is ongoing. And again, the investigation's ongoing by the Ontario Fire Marshals. When that gets completed, we'll know.
Are you able to say what the issues were with compliance? What needs to get done?
And sorry, no, as the investigation's ongoing, we can't speak to those right now.
How frustrating is it for you? You tell us that you can't do anything, you can't go in there and evict people, you don't have the right to do that. How frustrating is it for you, especially when you see the consequence of something that, you know, you're saying could have been prevented?
Well, it's infuriating. It's why we've had a very public battle in this city about wanting to deal with slum landlords, and not to speak to this specific instance because we don't know all the details of what may be shortcomings in fire code or building code, but it's why we created a pilot project in the city specifically targeting some of these units where we know we've had units where there's 25 individuals living in it, and I've said I don't want to get a call from the fire chief about another tragedy. It's when we created this new licensing tool. I would note this is not licensed to have multiple tenants, and so all those details will come out as the investigation occurs. But I think this really speaks to the fact why it is so critical that if you're having multiple renters, that you adhere to building code and fire code. And I hope that we don't have to hear about another tragedy like this.
Mayor Brown, so this is not the first time this has happened, and you're acknowledging that there is no way for you to stop this from happening. So this itself was a 6-year process, and given that incidents have happened in the past, can nothing be done to address matters like this before a tragedy occurs?
So what I would say is that the pilot project that was launched called the RRL, and it's been launched in parts of the city, and our hope is to roll it out around the city, does give the city power to have entry. It treats rental units as a commercial license, and so it's a business. Under the current rules, if it's the city didn't have the power to enter, which is why we've taken these additional steps to provide additional tools to combat what could be unsafe units. And we probably had a weekly protest in the city against the changes we've made, but we've gone ahead, we've forged ahead with these changes because we believe that every unit in the city should adhere to building code and fire code. And we've had some very loud, aggressive protest against the new bylaw that we brought in.
Okay. All right, listening to Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown and other fire officials giving an update on a blaze early this morning there. 9 people lived in the home, 2 were renters, 2 people died in this fire, no ages or gender on those 2. 4 sent to hospital, 3 are still missing. But another issue that was raised, according to Brampton's mayor, the landlord was not there, an absentee, and apparently there were building permits that were requested to turn it into a multi-unit dwelling, and renovations to be done were also requested, but the city issued several orders to comply. Investigations were refused. Now, they're not saying this is the cause, but it is a major concern. There'd been this back and forth going on for 6 years. Of course, we'll keep on following this news. We'll give you an update at 5 and 6, and of course online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.